Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Retribution Studios and episode 3 of our Welcome to Magic the Gathering series. Today we will be talking about activated abilities, triggered abilities, and planeswalkers. So a couple things that I want to review first before we hop into all of that. They're the zones of play. So your deck, also known as your library, that's where you're going to draw cards from each turn. Your hand, which is the cards that you currently are able to cast or play from your hand. You start with 7 cards at the start of the game, and you draw a card in your draw step every turn. The battlefield, all the permanents, once again, lands, creatures, artifacts, enchantments, and the last card type we're going to talk about later in this video are all permanents that stay on the battlefield after they've been resolved. The graveyard, which is where permanents, when they're destroyed, go to the graveyard, as well as instants and sorceries. After they're done resolving, they also go to the graveyard. There is an extra zone called the exile. So whenever something is exiled by a card effect, it is further removed from the graveyard. There are significantly less cards that can actually affect cards within exile. In the format that I play, there is a zone called the command zone. So Commander as a format is built around picking a legendary creature and building a deck within the same colors as that creature. So you can cast your commander from the command zone anytime that you could cast that commander, normally at sorcery speed in one of your main phases. When it dies, after it makes a pit stop in the graveyard, it can go back to the command zone. Same for exile. If it goes to exile, it goes back to the command zone. However, if it goes to your hand, it just stays in your hand. Each time you cast it from the command zone, it costs 2 extra. That's enough about that. I don't want to get too lost in the weeds about the different zones. I want to jump into activated abilities. So I'm going to tilt the camera down. Too far. So the first and most simple activated ability that we're going to talk about today is land. So technically lands are activated abilities. So if we tap this, we're activating it to get a green mana. Mana abilities, so a mana ability that would generate mana cannot be responded to. So no one gets a chance to counterspell me tapping my land. That's not a thing. The lands don't use the stack when activating for mana, or any permanent for that matter. If you have a creature or an artifact that taps for mana, or even a planeswalker that activates for mana, it cannot be responded to. Next up, we got our Terramorphic Expanse here. So this is tap and sacrifice Terramorphic Expanse : So everything before the colon is the cost of being able to activate this ability. So I'm going to tap it and sacrifice it, which means send it to the graveyard. And then it says search your library for a basic land card, put it into play tapped. Shuffle your library afterwards. So I'll go ahead and search for a plains, and I'll put a plains into play. Once again, the basic land types are forest, plains, islands, mountains, and I don't think I have a swamp handy, but those are the 5 basic land types. The next type of activated ability on a creature is a tap ability. So just like lands, creatures can tap 2, even when they're not attacking. In the case of Rune of the Hidden Realm, it says 2 and tap. Exile another creature. Return that creature to the battlefield under the owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Reading upside down is hard. So once again, everything before the colon is the cost. 2 and tap. So I have to pay 2 mana and tap him to be able to activate his ability. There's a catch though. So the turn that creatures come into play, they have what's called Summoning Sickness. Summoning Sickness means they can't attack the turn that they came in, nor can they activate tap abilities. So if an ability requires a creature to tap, you can't do it. There is a mechanic called Haste, and usually red cards are the ones that have Haste, but not always. And there are ways to give creatures Haste. We'll get more in depth on that in the keywords video. But for now, I want to focus on this activated ability. So let's say I have this Eternal Witness in play. So I'm going to activate Rune's ability, targeting Eternal Witness. Just like spells, which require targets, you'll remember we cast Mind Rot on Spike. I had to target someone as I cast that spell. Just like that, I have to name my target when I activate an ability. So I'm going to target this Eternal Witness. It is going to get exiled until the end of the turn. So it'll leave, and it'll come back at the end step. So now we can go over triggered abilities, because there's actually going to be two that are going to happen right now. So as we move into the end step, that triggers the second part of this ability, and we are now prompted to put Eternal Witness back into play. Eternal Witness reads, whenever Eternal Witness comes into play, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So currently we have this Terramorphic Expanse in our graveyard, so we'll go ahead and put that into our hand. That is a triggered ability, so it'll say whenever, or at a specific time. Like for example, I have another spell, so let's say on an opponent's turn, I cast Ephemerate, and I exile my rune and return him to play. It says after that, Rebound, you may cast this spell from your hand, exile it as it resolves, or if you cast a spell from your hand, exile it as it resolves. And then at my upkeep, the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast this spell from exile without paying its mana cost. So when it comes back to my turn, I can cast Ephemerate for free, and I'll choose Eternal Witness. I didn't mean for this to be a combo, but it kind of is, or at least synergy. So Eternal Witness will leave play and come back, and Ephemerate will go to my graveyard. Well, guess what? Eternal Witness, once again, has a triggered ability since it's re-entering the battlefield. It says I can return a card from my graveyard to my hand. I'll go ahead and get this Ephemerate back. So I didn't mean to show like a little loop, but that's actually pretty neat. So the next type of activated ability I want to talk about, at least for creatures, is a activated ability that does not require a tap. So this one says 2, a white and a blue. Return target, very similar to Rune. Return target creature, remove target creature from the play. Return it at the beginning of the next instant. So we can do the same thing. But the nice thing about her is she does not have a tap symbol. So the turn that she comes into play, she can activate that ability, no problem. So we've gone over the basics of activated abilities and triggered abilities. I want to cover another card type, which is very inherent to activated and triggered abilities. This is called a Planeswalker. So the main concept of the game when it came out is that the players are Planeswalkers, or people who could shift from dimension to dimension to different parallel universes, and each of the worlds within Magic the Gathering are themed differently. So it wasn't until I believe 2006 or 2007 that the Planeswalker card type came into play. It was in the set called Lorwyn. So this one, it's just the one that I had the most convenient access to be honest with you, is Venser. So he costs 3, a white and a blue. So 5 mana to cast, and one of it has to be white, one of it has to be blue. Planeswalkers have what's called loyalty, or loyalty counters. It'll say at the bottom right corner what their loyalty is when they come into play. In the case of Venser, it is 3. He has a loyalty, 3 loyalty abilities over here. Just like the creatures that we talked about earlier, these are activated abilities. Unlike creature activated abilities, which are instant speed, Planeswalker activated abilities are only sorcery speed, meaning you can only activate them on your main phase. You can only activate Planeswalker abilities once per turn unless you have some other effect that allows you to do it more than once. So, the first one, the cost is the change of loyalty. So over here, he has a +2, a -1, and a -8. So I can activate the +2 and the -1, but I don't have enough loyalty. I only have 3 to activate the -8. So if we +2, the very first thing that happens, no one gets to respond to me changing the loyalty of Venser by activating his ability. That is actually the cost of activating that ability. It says exile another permanent and return it to the battlefield at the end of the turn under the owner's control. So let's say I have this tapped island, Venser exiles it, now it's untapped. So I could potentially, if I had a spell open, I could potentially cast that with that blue mana that I've essentially regained for myself. If I were to, on my following turn, if I had some creatures in play, right, and I wanted to make sure I was able to get through without being blocked, I could -1 Venser and swing with these guys, and it says creatures are unblockable this turn. So that adds a nice little benefit. The idea of Planeswalkers, at least the older ones, was they had these 2 abilities, and the first one was usually good, and the second one was usually great, but removed loyalty, and then the ultimate almost never happened, but if it did happen, in most Planeswalkers, you win the game. And Venser's is pretty dang good. Let's say I activated the +2 a few more times, and I've got him up to 8. It's my turn. I press negative, or I press -8. I've been playing too many computer games. I remove 8 loyalty counters from Venser, and it says you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, exile target permanent. So emblems are something that don't really exist. They're not interactable with. They just hang out on the board, and we have this effect for the rest of the game, and no one can do anything about it. Thus, you can see why that doesn't happen all that often. Most people take measures to make sure that Planeswalkers don't ultimate. So because Venser no longer has any loyalty left, he had 8 on him, and I activated his ultimate, he's gone. He goes to the graveyard. So that's Planeswalkers as far as activating their abilities. One thing that I think makes Planeswalkers complicated, we talked about combat, I believe last video, and what I didn't mention is that when you choose to attack someone, you can choose to attack players or Planeswalkers. You can't attack other creatures, but you can attack Planeswalkers. So let's say my opponent is Spike, and he has this Venser at 8 loyalty. Let's make it 6. He had 6 loyalty counters. Where is the 6? I think that's a 9, but there we go. 6. So he has no creatures. I can attack him with Amarith, or I could attack Venser with Amarith. I get to choose whether to attack the Planeswalker or the player. That can be a little confusing, but whenever I deal damage to the Planeswalker, it removes that many counters. So Amarith has 6 power. Venser currently has 6 loyalty, so he would die. Let's say I attack him with Rune. Rune has 4 power, so that would take him down to 2. I think that's where I'm going to cut it off for today. I think that's a pretty good overview of everything I wanted to talk about. In the next episode, I think we're going to go over keywords. So keywords are just repeating mechanics that continue to come back and are kind of core to the game. But thank you guys so much for watching. Share the video. I'd love to continue to build the audience. I'm not really looking to build a career out of this. I just kind of want to bring more knowledge to beginning players and make this a fun and enjoyable experience to learn and play. So we'll see you guys next time. If you want to like it, go ahead. If you want to share it, if you want to leave a comment, it would be great. We'll see you next time.